Hello, boys and girls. A little different video today. I imagine that the frequency and the volume of the pickups will decrease now that I, have gotten into a more stable situation, and I'm trying to, just do the responsible adult life things. But there'll still be good stuff on the way, and I'll make sure to show it off when it comes, and we'll just transition into more perhaps review type videos as well as getting No Money Film School off the ground now that I've got a new setup and all that good stuff. But a few things did come today, and then I'll talk about the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today. But yeah, this is the Blu-ray of Lou Simon's 3, autographed by her. And as you can see, it's just called 3 instead of 3 An Eye for an Eye, because that was the original title and the original poster. This one was a horror pack exclusive, and that's why, like, in the last video, that's why I provided the link to the more readily accessible DVD, because this one I had to track down on eBay, so, yeah, but I think the cover looks a lot cooler, the title looks cooler, and it was the original title, so, it's more true to the director's vision. Next up, Don John with the slipcover. I want to watch this movie again because there's a lot about it that I liked when I saw it, and other things that I was like, the seriousness of the subject seemed to be kind of incongruous with the overall comedic tone. At least that's what I thought at the time. A lot of 2013 movies I'm having to go back and reevaluate because that was not a good year for me, to be honest with you. And then 2 Amanda Seyfried films because for whatever reason I am doing my exploration of her career and talents because that's what I do. I get random obsessions like that. But we got Boogie Woogie and In Time with Justin Timberlake there. And then a few slip covers for things that you've seen before. Black Death, The Possession, Nonstop, and The Place Beyond the Pines. So yeah, not a whole lot came, but I primarily wanted to make this video because, well, if you live in the United States, there are a lot of protests and, demonstrations and things going on regarding the George Floyd situation where he was, killed by police officers. And it's one of the many, many, many instances of police brutality and police killing that was, unnecessary and done against the African American community, and it's caused so much racial it's exacerbated the centuries old racial tensions that have existed in this country since before we achieved independence. So this is not anything new. It's just the latest version of it, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit because, well, I'm not, I won't sit here and pretend like I understand fully what, the people that have been going through this for their whole lives, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have experienced the kind of, prejudice and hatred that they have, because, that would be disingenuous of me and just flat out wrong. And untruthful. So instead of that, I'm going to, well, A, express my, deepest sympathies, B, just let everyone know that whether they are in, a demonstration or whether they are, just trying to show love or compassion in some other kind of way, just to make sure that you're, well, keeping yourself and others safe as much as possible, while at the same time trying to, make your voice heard, because, free speech is, there's a reason why it's the First Amendment, because it's our most precious gift, and if we don't have our own voices, then we have nothing. And so, just, make sure that you're making yourself heard in such a way that you feel is best, while, preferably keeping within the realms of, safety and legality and all that stuff. But more specifically for me, this is in conjunction with what I tried to talk to some people about. I had tried to talk to people on Facebook about this sort of thing, which was just within my own I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for other people. And so, I feel like there's always room for improvement, certainly within myself, certainly within other, white people and people of other races. And, there's tons of areas of improvement within the current, legal and political systems. But there can be so many changes that need to be made that it can often leave you wondering, well, where do I start? How do I even go about doing this? Because it's like, the whole burden of responsibility. It would be unreasonable to assume that any one person could shoulder the entire burden of responsibility for all that needs to happen in our culture to have it to where this sort of thing doesn't continue to happen. But that being said, that's no excuse for us to not do what we can to change ourselves, because it's the individual heart that makes up the whole. And if we can really work on ourselves, then that should help society as a whole. Well, so I got to thinking about that, and I found this article from website greatergood.berkeley.edu, and I'll post the link in the description. But it's about trying to address the racist inside, or the more specifically, and some kind of unconscious biases that a person may have. And it specifically talks about some of the neurological, the neurological basis for some of our fight or flight reactions that we can have related to, people of different races, or just more, or even more broadly, just people of different tribes, or different, anyone who is the other in some way. Essentially, the article talked about how, yes, indeed, there is a fight or flight response that, human beings have towards, people that don't fall within our particular tribes, but it is something that goes beyond race, and it's also not absolute. It's something that it's most definitely there. It's a carryover from our lower order instincts, from our, from the more primitive reptilian brain, from that fight or flight response. But obviously, since then, we've developed, the ability to reason and communicate, beyond what we ever thought possible. And so, we are able, unlike, say, a chimpanzee that can't put into words, why that chimpanzee wouldn't necessarily like another chimpanzee of another group, because we do see territoriality, and we do see some aspects of tribalism in other mammalian species. But because we have that ability to reason, and because we have the ability to look inside ourselves to figure out, how to be more egalitarian and more, looking outside of our own realms of experience, less ethnocentric, then, we have that capacity, and we should always be working on ways to do so. And in the article, it talked about how, understand that, everybody has that inside of them, that response inherent, but also that you are not the unconscious self is not any more of the real you than what you consciously think or believe, that in fact people are the fusion of their conscious and unconscious selves. And that being said, look to talk to people and interact with them, those who are different than you, and to find those areas of commonality. And just being able to seek out the most egalitarian solution to a particular problem. And also, when you do find those instances of racism that you see amongst people, then you speak up about it. And I think those are all perfectly reasonable things. Those are all things that everyone can do. Those are things that I'm sure working on, because I'm by no means perfect. I've seen a lot of people in my, immediate surroundings growing up that, were, more explicitly or more implicitly racist. And if you're not consciously aware of that, then it can spill into your life, and it can affect your own interactions with people. Now, I caught that pretty early on, and I worked hard to be a more egalitarianly minded person. But even then, it's like no one's perfect, and I don't pretend like I have done all that I can to try and better this situation that we're in. I don't pretend like I've done this great amount of work. I think that there's a lot more I could do. And so this is part of my attempt to do that. It's to try and encourage all of you out there to look inside yourselves and to understand that, those kinds of knee jerk reactions have a basis, but they don't define us. And we have the ability to embrace our higher order instincts and to, well, love one another. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do as human beings. We're supposed to love each other. And, we all have the capacity to do that. So, no matter what race you are or whatever, I mean, everyone, I think, could be able to treat each other better. And, specifically with the George Floyd situation, it's and specifically with other instances of police brutality, again, and just other forms of prejudice against African Americans. That has a very long, storied, tragic history in the United States ever since before we had achieved independence from Britain, and it's just dismaying to see that we haven't learned anywhere near what we should have learned a long, long time ago, and that these problems continue to persist. And again, it's not. It would be disingenuous to say that people of other races haven't experienced prejudice or hardship or hate crimes, like obviously with the closures related to the coronavirus. The people of Asian descent are experiencing an uptick in hate crimes. So this is a persistent problem. It just has been particular and systemic and well documented with the African American community, and it's tragically continued to persist. And so we need to be pursuing the sociological solutions that allow us to get to the heart of our problems with each other. And that's on an individual level. We need to be seeking the most egalitarian solutions on a larger macrocosmic systemic level. We need to hold those who commit those kinds of atrocities to account with the appropriate sentences. We need to continue to raise awareness of when the justice system continues to be disproportionately harsher to non-whites, specifically to African Americans. We need to continue to raise awareness about these things, and I give a lot of credit to those who are. And I feel, just at least from myself, that there's a lot more that I could do, that I have been guilty of some of the things that the article that I'll post, I've been guilty of some of the things that the article talked about, how sometimes the avoidance of being in situations that could be, in which one could accidentally be, perceived as racist or whatever, that sometimes that avoidance, it contributes to that lack of fostering egalitarianism on the inside, and it inhibits one's ability to affect real change, and it can be counterproductive. And so I take full responsibility for that, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who feel that same way. And so it's, for me, it's just my way of saying that there's a lot more work to do, and it starts with each and every one of us. So whatever you choose to do, whether you go to a protest or whether you just talk to your neighbor about these issues, understand that, we're all in this together. There is no us versus them, or rather, we can't have that mentality. It's that mentality that continues to hurt us. Across the board is the us versus them mentality, and the more that we can reach out to our neighbor and treat them with love, then that's the only way that we can combat this horrible hatred that continues to infect this country. And yeah, so I just hope that other people will take something from this, and I promise to get to some more lighthearted content in the future. But just these are things that have been on my mind, so I wanted to confess the failings that I have had, as well as to be more recommit myself to constantly improving, and I hope that you'll do the same. So yeah, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, set phasers to stun, warp factor 5, and continue speaking about these issues, and keep raising awareness of injustice, because evil men win when good men do nothing, and be the change that you want to see in the world.